Hello everyone, thanks for watching our video. Today's video we're going to do some testing with a 1968 to 1976 style water temperature gauge. Actually, I think this temperature gauge is out of a 76. The purpose of this video is to show you what a gauge will do or how it will react with certain issues. Issues that would include an ohms wire that's off, an ohms wire that's grounded out, a missing ground on the gauge, and we're going to actually short out a resistor so that you can see what it does with a blown resistor. So we're going to start this video out with the gauge we've got here. It's a 76 gauge. It's dialed up to 200 degrees. I don't know what the ohms input is on it right now. We just wanted to make sure you could see it. We've got an adjustable pot on there that we can turn and change the reading with. So we're going to leave it at 200. That's fine. Be right in the middle so you get a good idea what's going on. So the first thing we're going to do is if you have a temperature gauge and the ohms wire comes off the gauge at the sending unit, in most cases what you'll get is anytime a ohms input is missing from a gauge, the gauge always responds to what is best for you. In a sense of, okay, you always want your car to run cool, you always want a full tank of gas, you want a lot of oil pressure. These are indications that the ohms wire is off the gauge out at the engine, or if it was a fuel gauge it would be at the sending unit. So we've removed the ohms wire from the gauge. Now if this same ohms wire is grounded out at the gauge, we can emulate that by grounding the stud out on the back of the gauge, and you're going to see what happens when you do that. The gauge pegs, and now it's important to watch where the gauge pegs to. It's not quite 3. In most cases it will actually go right to 3 o'clock, but this will give you a good general idea what to look for. So back right now to no ohms input, and it goes good. So you go full hot with the gauge grounded out, and you go to cold with it missing the input. This is simulating being out at the dash or out at the sending unit, not at the dash. This is similar to being out at the engine and pulling the wire off the sending unit and then grounding it out to test the dash function of the gauge. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the ground wire. Now you're going to see a change this time that's kind of different, and this is the ground missing from the gauge housing. And you're going to be a little bit, I'm going to say probably just a little bit. Boy, did you see that arc? You're going to end up just a little bit past the rivet on the right hand side. Now, unlike a gauge that if your gauge is like that, this is with the ohms missing. This is with the ground missing. Okay, so we've got that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to short out, and I got to put this back on. This is not so easy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, let's say you had your gauge cluster apart and you put it back together, and you're going to get a reading that looks something like this. And let's hope I can do this. All right. And you're getting that reading. All right, and you're getting that reading. Now, that reading is different from the reading you're going to get when it's missing ohms. If you look, see it's further toward 100. Now, what this reading is a reading for the guy that left the red insulation washer off the cluster when he put it back together. And I'll show you this in just a second on the back of the cluster. If you look at the back of this dash cluster right here, if you look right there, there's an insulating washer underneath there. That insulating washer, if left out, is what causes the other problem. It also caused havoc with your other gauges. There is one of the washers that we've taken out of a prior unit, and we just put it out to show you what's going on. Now I'm going to pause the video for a second. I'm going to remove the resistor from this gauge, and then we're going to have a whole new test for you. we removed the resistor, and we're getting the same reading that we got when the gauge actually didn't have a ground. That's going to narrow it down to one or two problems. Problem one would be a ground missing from the gauge, which is on the middle terminal on the back of the gauge, or it means that you've got a blown resistor on the back of the gauge. It's an identical reading, exact same setting, shows up in the exact same place. So there shouldn't be any confusion. It's just you're just going to have two spots to look for, or two issues to look for versus one. A quick way to get around this would be to run a ground from your connection on the 68 to 76 cars. You could actually go to this connector in the back. You could just run an extra ground and peen into it to the wire. You know, you could prick the wire with a probe and run an extra ground just to see if that's going to solve your problem. If that doesn't solve your problem, then I would go to the resistor actually in the back of the gauge. We've not talked about this resistor much. This is the resistor. They're pretty sought after right now. There's ways you can make this resistor. You can go to Radio Shack. In most cases, and on most gauges, this is a 90 ohm resistor. If that resistor is bad, you can buy resistance wire online. You can rewind it. You could go to Radio Shack and buy some resistors. As long as they total up to 90 ohms, you should be in good shape. So it's pretty much going to wrap up the video. I don't see any other circumstance that could be illustrated with the gauge aside from what we've already shown you. I hope this helps you find your gauge problem for sure. And I guess I'd like to say if you get a chance, visit our